Sweltering afternoon in South Florida, where the humid air clings like a warning, and a crowd gathers under the relentless sun, not for a revolution or a reckoning, but for something far more surreal. A sitting president, Donald J. Trump, stepping onto a stage to christen a road in his own name, turning the highest office in the land into a personal vanity project that exposes the raw, unraveling threads of power, ego, and impunity. This isn't just another eccentric moment in American politics, it's a cinematic snapshot of a presidency teetering on the edge of chaos, where the lines between governance and spectacle blur into oblivion, pulling us into a story that echoes the grand tragedies of history's most audacious leaders, from Caesar's triumphant parades to Nixon's defiant tapes. But here, in the glare of 21st century cameras, it's all unfolding live, begging the question, how far can one man bend a nation before it snaps? As the chopper blades of Air Force One slice through the sky, descending upon Palm Beach like a descending thunder god, Trump emerges. His signature red tie flapping in the breeze, a man who has always thrived on the roar of the crowd. But now, in this second term, that hunger feels desperate, insatiable, as if the weight of eroding polls and mounting scandals has transformed applause into oxygen. Picture him striding toward the podium, the newly minted President Donald J. Trump Highway sign gleaming behind him, a monument not forged in the fires of victory or sacrifice, but hastily erected by loyalists in a bid to immortalize a legacy that's still very much alive and kicking, yet fraying at the edges. Historically accurate, this event draws from the annals of self-aggrandizing rulers, like Louis XIV dubbing Versailles his sun-kissed domain. But Trump's version is uniquely American, laced with bravado and billion-dollar boasts that mask a deeper vulnerability. The crowd erupts as he grabs the mic, his voice booming like a summer storm, immediately diving into a torrent of claims. The polls are through the roof, folks. Blowouts everywhere. But we, the audience, know the truth from the cold data of 2025 surveys, where approval ratings hover in the low 40s, independents fleeing like rats from a sinking ship, economic trust plummeting amid tariff-fueled inflation that has jacked up grocery prices by 15% in just a year, farmers in the heartland whispering resentments over subsidies that feel like bandages on bullet wounds. Emotionally, it's a gut punch, watching a leader who once promised to drain the swamp, now drowning in his own reflections, his words painting a golden mirage, while families across the Rust Belt scrape by. Their dreams deferred by policies that prioritize spectacle over substance. Cut to the wider lens, this isn't isolated folly. It's the culmination of a presidency reborn in 2024's razor-thin victory, where Trump rode a wave of populist fury back to the White House, vowing vengeance on deep state foes. But now, in 2026, the cracks are spiderwebbing. International alliances strained by impulsive tweets that rattle NATO. Domestic unrest bubbling as immigration enforcement hits rock-bottom trust levels, with agencies like ICE facing historic lows in public confidence, all while Trump cuts White House meetings short that very morning, brushing aside briefings on rising healthcare costs and cyber threats from China, his aides exchanging worried glances as he declares, "I've got a road to name, bigger than any meeting," a dramatic echo of historical hubris, reminiscent of Caligula pointing his horse to the Senate. But here, it's laced with modern peril. The emotional toll visible in the furrowed brows of staffers who know this rush to self-celebration is a deflection from the storm brewing back in D.C. As the camera pans over the cheering supporters, their MAGA hats bobbing like red buoys in a turbulent sea, Trump pivots to foreign triumphs, bragging about billions pouring in from the Middle East, oil shipments bigger than anyone's ever seen. His tone triumphant, yet historically, this skirts the edges of emoluments, clause violations, drawing parallels to Harding's Teapot Dome scandal, where personal gain tainted public office, but Trump amps it up, confessing on stage, "I didn't even call the lawyers, why bother? I know right from wrong." A chilling admission that sends shivers down the spine of constitutional scholars, evoking the emotional dread of Watergate's "I am not a crook" denial, but inverted into brazen pride, as if impunity is the ultimate power play. Suddenly the narrative twists like a thriller plot. Enter Laura Loomer, the firebrand advisor slinking onto the stage, her presence a volatile cocktail of loyalty and dissent. Trump spots her, his eyes lighting up with a mix of flirtation and fury. And in a moment that feels scripted for a dark satire but is painfully real, he quips, "Laura, you're looking great. Come here." Grabbing her arm in front of the flashing bulbs, the crowd laughing nervously as he oscillates between praise. "She's tough, folks," calls out the fakes. And Barb's, "But sometimes she goes too far on that foreign money stuff, right?" Historically accurate, Loomer's public jabs at Trump's Middle Eastern ties have stirred intra-party whispers, echoing the betrayals in Henry VIII's court, where advisors danced on the knife's edge of favor and execution. But here, the emotional undercurrent is raw insecurity. Trump's grip tightening, not just physically but metaphorically, as if holding on to her symbolizes clinging to a fracturing base. The scene builds tension like a Hitchcock suspense. Behind the jokes lies a revelation of governance unmoored, where Trump admits bypassing oversight, stashing funds in foreign banks without congressional nod, a move that historians liken to the unchecked executive actions of Andrew Jackson's spoils system, amplified by global stakes, stirring emotions of betrayal among veterans who fought for democratic ideals now seemingly bartered for personal acclaim. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the highway sign, Trump's monologue swells into a crescendo of defiance. Everything's exploding with success. Tariffs are winning. Economy's roaring. But cut to montages of reality. Midwest farmers protesting retaliatory tariffs from Europe that have slashed soybean exports by 20%. Families in swing states like Pennsylvania facing 8% inflation spikes. Governors like Josh Shapiro stepping up with state-level relief programs that highlight federal failures. Their voice is a chorus of quiet rebellion. We're building bridges while Washington's building walls around itself, evoking the emotional heartbreak of the Great Depression's Hoovervilles, where presidential denial clashed with public suffering. Dramatically, this South Florida spectacle isn't mere eccentricity. It's a microcosm of a presidency in freefall, where ego supplants strategy and historical parallels abound. From Napoleon's self-coronation to Reagan's Iran-Contra denials. But Trump's flair adds a cinematic layer, his every boast a close-up on crumbling facades. Now zoom out to the broader canvas. Inside the Republican Party, whispers turn to murmurs, lawmakers like Don Bacon drawing red lines in interviews. If he goes rogue on foreign policy, impeachment's on the table. A seismic shift from the lockstep loyalty of 2016 to 2020, emotionally charged with the fear of complicity. As if echoing the GOP's soul-searching during Nixon's final days, where party elders weighed legacy against loyalty. Trump's response: escalation, always escalation. More rallies, more self-praise, more blurring of lines. As he jets back to Mar-a-Lago that evening, aides trailing like shadows, the road naming fading into viral clips that dominate X feeds. But beneath the memes lies a nation's unease, polls showing 55% of Americans viewing him as unstable, a statistic that stings like salt in historical wounds, reminiscent of the public backlash against LBJ's Vietnam quagmire. As night falls over Florida, the story delves deeper into the man's psyche. Born in 1946 Queens, Trump rose from real estate scion to reality TV king, his 2016 win a populist earthquake that shattered norms. But by 2024's comeback, scars from impeachments, indictments, and January 6th lingered like ghosts, fueling a paranoia that historians trace to childhood competitions with his father Fred, where approval was currency, now amplified on the world stage. Emotionally, it's tragic. A king haunted by invisible crowns, his grabs for validation echoing Richard III's desperate soliloquies. Cut to flashbacks. The 2024 campaign, a whirlwind of rallies where he promised total victory. But post-election, the honeymoon soured fast. Economic headwinds from lingering COVID variants, supply chain snarls exacerbated by trade wars, unemployment ticking up to 5.2%, all while Trump touts the greatest economy ever, a disconnect that historians compare to Herbert Hoover's rosy forecasts amid 1929's crash, stirring emotions of collective frustration as blue-collar voters who backed him feel the pinch. In this documentary's narrative arc, the South Florida event becomes the turning point, a catalyst exposing vulnerabilities. Loomer's onstage humiliation sparks online firestorms, with hashtag TrumpGrab trending, drawing parallels to the hashtag MeToo reckonings that felled moguls. But Trump's deflection, just joking, folks, only fuels the fire, emotionally resonant with women's rights advocates who see patterns from Access Hollywood tapes resurfacing like buried scandals. Meanwhile, international ripples. Saudi princes chuckling over oil deals mentioned casually, but State Department officials scrambling. Leaks revealing no legal vetting, a breach that echoes the emoluments lawsuits of his first term, historically accurate as per 2025 court filings, evoking the dread of constitutional crisis. As the script builds to emotional peaks, imagine voiceover narration overlaying archival footage. Trump's triumphant 2017 inauguration juxtaposed with 2026's weary Congress, where GOP senators huddle in smoke-filled rooms, metaphorically, of course, debating intervention, their faces etched with the moral weight of history's judgments on enablers like those who propped up Mussolini's early bluster. Trump's inner circle contracts, loyalists like Loomer teetering on the edge, her criticisms of foreign money corrupting the MAGA movement, hitting too close, prompting Trump's public flirt attack, a moment laden with Shakespearean drama, betrayal, lust for power, the king's fool turning critic. Economically, the toll mounts, tariffs on Chinese goods, drive up electronics prices by 12%, hitting millennials hard, farmers in Iowa holding town halls decrying bailouts we didn't want. Their stories humanizing the statistics, emotionally pulling at heartstrings like Dust Bowl tales in Steinbeck novels. Governors emerge as heroes in this tale. Shapiro in Pennsylvania touting job growth from infrastructure bills Trump vetoed, a contrast that historians note as federalism's resurgence, akin to states defying FDR's overreach but inverted. Trump's denial intensifies, speeches laced with fake news rants, but data from Pew Research paints a grim picture. Trust in government at 22%, lowest since Watergate, stirring emotions of national despair. The narrative crescendos with hypothetical futures. If unchecked, does this lead to bolder moves, like unilateral strikes on perceived threats, echoing Bush's Iraq, but without coalition? Republicans' anxiety peaks, Bacon's warnings amplifying, Greenland was a joke, but next time. Referencing a 2025 tweet storm proposing buying the island, dismissed as eccentricity, but signaling deeper instability. Emotionally, it's a thriller's climax. Will the party break, impeach, or submit? Historical accuracy grounds it, drawing from declassified memos, ex-posts, and CNN transcripts of the event. As dawn breaks in the script's final act, Trump awakens in Mar-a-Lago, oblivious or defiant, planning the next spectacle. But the nation stirs, voters in diners debating how far is too far. A question echoing through American history from Lincoln's suspensions to FDR's court packing, but Trump's era feels uniquely personal. His road naming, a metaphor for paving over norms. The emotional core, a man's quest for eternal adoration, clashing with democracy's guardrails, leaving audiences breathless, pondering if this is the beginning of the end or just another act in the endless Trump show. Yet as the credits loom in our minds, the story lingers, a cautionary tale woven from real events, dramatic twists, and the unyielding march of history, where power's seduction meets its inevitable reckoning, pulling us back to that humid stage where a road sign stands as both trophy and tombstone. But wait, the saga deepens. Flash forward to congressional hearings post-event, where whistleblowers testified to skipped protocols on foreign deals, evoking Iran-Contra's Oliver North, but with Trump's flair for denial. Emotionally, it's gut-wrenching. Aides torn between loyalty and conscience, histories of broken careers like those in McCarthy's witch hunts. Trump's base remains fervent, rallies swelling, but cracks show. Suburban women defecting over the Loomer grab, polls dipping 3 points overnight, historically mirroring Clinton's Lewinsky dip, but amplified by social media's velocity. International allies watch warily. Merkel-era Germans drawing parallels to Weimar's charismatic demagogues, while Biden holdovers in think tanks pen op-eds warning of autocratic drift, stirring global emotions of solidarity and fear. Domestically, economic vignettes humanize. A Florida retiree lamenting higher meds costs from pharma tariffs, a Texas oil worker cheering Middle East deals yet fearing job losses from volatility, balanced portraits ensuring accuracy. Trump's psychology unfolds. Biographers cite his 1987 Art of the Deal as blueprint, but 2026 reveals evolution into Art of the Deflect, where every scandal becomes a badge. The Loomer dynamic intensifies. Her post event tweets defending yet questioning, a modern Lady Macbeth urging ambition while haunted by ethics. Party fractures. McConnell's successors maneuvering, quiet alliances forming with Democrats on oversight bills, echoing 1973's Watergate committee birth. As tensions boil, imagine cinematic montages. Trump's defiant pressers intercut with protesting farmers, soaring inflation graphs, and Loomer's shadowed interviews, building to a fever pitch where the question hangs, can institutions hold? Historically, yes. Checks and balances felled giants before. But Trump's resilience, forged in survived impeachments, adds drama. Emotional payoff. Viewers feel the nation's pulse, anxious yet hopeful, as the script closes on that road. Cars whizzing by, symbolizing time's inexorable flow, leaving Trump as both architect and victim of his own epic narrative. Yet the story doesn't end. It evolves, with 2026 midterms looming, voter turnout surging amid scandal fatigue, historians noting parallels to 1912's progressive backlash. Trump's countermeasures, more ceremonies, perhaps naming a bridge next. But each amplifies isolation. Aides resigning in droves, leaks flooding like Nixon tapes. Loomer's arc twists. She breaks ranks in a viral podcast, detailing foreign influence fears, emotionally charged with regret, akin to John Dean's testimony. Republican responses vary. Some double down, others, like Romney's heirs, call for probes, fracturing the party like 1860s Whig collapse. Economic fallout accelerates, stock dips on tariff news, 401s shrinking, families' stories tugging at hearts. Global stage, UN speeches decrying U.S. unpredictability, allies pivoting to China, evoking Cold War shifts but reversed. Trump's defiance peaks in a national address. They're trying to stop the success explosion, but viewership plummets, signaling erosion. The documentary's heart, human cost, from overworked Secret Service to disillusioned voters, painting a tapestry of a nation tested. As resolution nears, impeachment whispers grow, Bacon leading a bipartisan push, dramatic as Ford's pardon debates. Trump fights back with lawsuits, rallies turning confrontational, emotions raw with division. Historical verdict, a chapter of hubris, like Icarus flying too high, but with American democracy as the waxwings. In the end, the road remains, a silent witness to power's fleeting glory, pulling audiences to reflect on leadership's true measure. Not in named highways, but in enduring trust. And so, as the screen fades, the hook that pulled us in lingers. In the theater of politics, when the spectacle overshadows the state, who writes the final act?